Shall we begin?
Let's get started. Hey, Mom, can I have $20?
I gave you $20 yesterday.
Today's episode is brought to you in part by the Waterwell Café located in downtown Victoria. They've got delicious lunch specials daily, and you can dine in or call 361-894-7206 to order to go. One of the reasons we love the Waterwell Cafe is because of how much they give back to the community, and that's only possible because of customers like us. So y'all check it out and grab some lunch. Another one of our sponsors today is Gulf Coast Car Wash. They are family owned and operated for over 25 years in the Crossroads area. They are located at 2901 Sam Houston Drive in Victoria, Texas. Right now, our listeners can get $5 off the deluxe package and the soft touch automatic wash with code 37330. Again, that code is 37330. Check out Gulf Coast Car Wash. So, Mom, I'm sure you've worried about this like all moms have. Did you ever worry that you weren't a good mom?
Well, no. Of course not. No, of course I did. And I almost don't think you can be a good mom if you don't worry about it. If you think you've got it all down and you know how to handle every situation, or you've got this, you're killing it, you're not. Because none of us are, but especially first time moms. Now, once you've had a couple, it's a little bit different. But yeah, especially early on, am I paying enough attention? I should have bought this. I should have taught this. I should have been there for that. And, all too often you only recognize those things in retrospect. And that's what makes us feel bad is the shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Yeah. And things are just very different also when you were a mom versus when I was a mom. So I have a 2-year-old almost. And you had 3 kids by 25.
Yeah, that felt like a lot.
Girl.
I look at you now with a 2-year-old and I look at Sheridan with her 5-year-old, and the two of them are a lot. And I can't imagine having one more in the middle. Oh, yeah. Y'all were 45 months apart. So not even a full 4 years apart by the time I was 25. And I've said since then that I remember people asking me in the grocery store, are they all yours? And I'm like, well, yeah, they all look like me. Can't you tell? And now I look at some of those young moms and go, oh, bless your heart. Oh, yeah. I remember those days. I don't know how I did it.
Yeah. I don't know how you did it either. Because you also had a husband that, Dad worked a lot at the time already, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was he doing by the time we were all born?
So by the time Dakota was the youngest, and by the time he was born, he was about a year old when Dad went to work in the oil field.
Okay.
So before that, he had mostly been home. He may work overtime. He had worked for the gas company doing leak detection. He had done construction. Obviously, he was still in the Marines when you were born, only for a couple of months. But probably your earliest memory, he was already working in the oil field.
Mm-hmm.
And his first job in that was 2 weeks on, 1 week off. So he was gone 14 days at a time. And there was no transition period. It was, I'm leaving. Are you going to be okay? And over the years, we learned that about 10 days is my limit. Mm-hmm. When you get up to 7, 8, 9 days, I'm going, when are you coming home?
Yeah.
But the same was true when he was home. A little less. We get up to 5, 6 days and I'm like, are you leaving yet? You're still here.
You're in my space. Yeah.
Yes.
Which is crazy because if Cade left for the night, I would scream.
Really?
Yes. Oh my gosh. If he works 14 hours a day, I'm like, come home. You need to be dashing out of there. Yeah. But it's because I'm so used to him being so hands-on. We're very much, when he's home, it's 2 of us. It's 2 of us, we get a lot more done that way when there's 4 hands instead of 2. And I can't imagine having 3 kids by myself for 2 weeks straight. That is...
Your dad was pretty hands-on too. From the time y'all were little, he would play with you or take you outside. Or he was also good when I was working and he was traveling. So for that week he was home, he would be really good about cleaning the kitchen or doing laundry, or he would go run the errands while I was at work so that I could have more time with him, with y'all, when I was home. And so that was a really great help. But yeah, I don't know how I did it for those 2 weeks. As we're talking, I'm also thinking both his and my mother's raised kids for a period of time without their husbands. So my dad was in the National Guard when I was little. And so he was gone for a period of time. But I also remember my dad going hunting, or several times they had gone to a NASCAR race, and so I remember it was not an uncommon part of the year for dad to be gone 5 days at a time, week at a time. And so that wasn't strange. And then also grandma and papa, he was a welder that traveled. And so he was gone a lot too. So I sort of came from a whole circle of people who had learned to do it on their own. Yeah. Now, are you as well-rounded and everything as y'all's children are going to be? Oh, probably not. I sure hope yours are doing better because, you're a mess. No, I'm kidding.
That's because you were a mess.
That is true. I was very definitely a mess.
I struggled very hard with postpartum anxiety. Yeah. And I think part of it probably had to do with her birth story. Is kind of traumatic for me.
Yeah.
It was an emergency C-section, and then I was away from her for about 9 hours. And I think that kind of scared me a little bit. I've said before that was the greatest sadness I've ever felt. And if I look back on it, it hurts, know, just that separation from her so early. I mean, immediately I heard her cry and she was gone, and so I think that kind of built a lot of that anxiety. I was always scared something was going to happen. I didn't want to be away from her even to shower. You remember a very early picture of her asleep in a laundry basket that I sent you because she was right outside the shower.
And me saying, I understand the anxiety, but she's asleep.
But I had to have eyes on her.
Asleep, yes.
Yeah. Did you struggle with things like that when, especially with me, you were in California by yourself, away from family with a newborn?
Not too much. And fortunately, it was probably really quick after you were born, maybe even been before you were born, that your dad, being a Marine, took terminal leave. So basically he had added up all of his time off, put it on at the end of his service. So he had like 2 months of time where he was getting a military pay, but he was also working a regular full-time job. And I wasn't. So he actually, from the time you were born almost, was there to help. And so I really didn't have that anxiety. Parents came out to see us and everything. But I also just didn't have anxiety. And for some reason, much fewer people did. And my general anxiety came later. It was triggered by an event. It falls under PTSD probably. But I did worry, you slept through the night at 3 weeks for the first time, 7 hours. And of course I wake up at 6 a.m. Oh my goodness, she hasn't woken up. She's dead. You really do go check the breathing and things like that. And I think those things that's universal for moms.
I think that part is. But I've made jokes to my husband that I made him anxious because now she's 2 years old and he is still checking her breathing every single night, even though I'm not.
Yeah.
I kind of gave that anxiety to him. And I'm so sorry, honey.
Do you mean like you caused it, or you handed it off to him and said, this is yours to worry about?
No, I think I caused it because I was so stressed about it in the beginning. And same thing with her eating. He's the one that's very anal about her snacks, the goldfish and Cheez-Its, because he's so worried about her choking, because I was. But he had never had any baby experience. Yeah. And so I think that also kind of made him anxious that, oh my gosh, I know nothing and you're stressed. Oh, I need to be stressed.
Yeah.
And even
I think there's an idea that if mom's freaking out, something's really wrong. Everybody needs to freak out.
Yes, but I'm a very maternal person. I did know what I was doing with a newborn, or a small baby at least. I didn't know everything, but I also spent months and months on TikTok watching newborn moms saying, this is what you do. This is what you do. So that
I think that if I can interrupt, I think that also went against you a little bit, because you were constantly saying, is this normal? Is this, proper for her age? Why isn't she doing this? Or fortunately, she was developing very quickly for the most part. Physically, she was meeting all the milestones ahead of time. But every little thing, it's back in the old days when WebMD was new. I went into a doctor's office. I think I was pregnant in fact, I was pregnant with Dakota. I had one of those tests that I had sworn off with the two of you that suggested he may have a genetic birth defect. And so I had the amniocentesis. You don't get the results back for like 2 weeks. And I had gone to my doctor and said, they're concerned about this. And he said, oh, please tell me you didn't look on the internet. Because everything's horrific. Every little possibility is terrible. And of course he was fine. No problems at all. But now you go into the doctor.
A little weird. No,
well, true, but it's not genetic. I think that today you go into the doctor and the doctor said, you go in and say, I was looking on the internet and here's what I've learned. Because we have, for the most part, become properly informed. But I think when you're facing something new and as huge as a new baby, you suck up all the information you can. And it's too much. Your brain isn't supposed to sift through all that. But I don't know how our grandmothers did it.
Yeah, because I felt like that one What to Expect When You're Expecting book was not enough.
Oh, and I was overwhelmed by that book, which was brand new in its first edition when I was pregnant the first time. And it was, however, parts of it were outdated. Like they talked about paper diapers, which they hadn't called it in 20 years. But, that was incredibly helpful for me. And something else that helped was somebody said, you spend all this time preparing for the birth and not enough time preparing for motherhood. I immediately picked up the next book, What to Expect the First Year. So it's interesting that for me, that was overwhelming. And for you, it was not enough.
And I guess that's because, like you said, the overinformation, the access to a lot.
Everything.
Like I said, I spent 9 months on TikTok. I mean, my whole feed was newborn diapers, newborn swaddle, how to do this, how to do that. Your baby, this sound isn't good for them. This isn't good for... I don't have a noise machine because I learned that some types of sounds are bad for their brain. So we don't do that. So
how much do you think it really matters? Is your kid really and truly going to be significantly better off than someone who's a little more letting the kids raise themselves or whatever, who isn't paying attention to all the latest trends and things?
Well, I think that anxiety about, I now know about every little thing that I could be doing wrong. It made me think that if I do any of those things wrong, it's going to make a big impact on her life. If I let her listen to that sound machine for 3 months so that she sleeps, she's going to have a reading disability,
yes. Okay.
And all those anxieties transferred that way. If she sleeps on her arm too long, she is definitely going to cut off circulation and have to have it amputated. And that is the rest of her life because I let her sleep for 8 hours on her arm. I mean, those anxieties transfer into the worst possible scenario. And it's every single one.
Okay, I want to clarify that the anxiety turns it into the worst case scenario.
Yes.
Right? I mean, just to clarify, your child sleeping on her arm for a few hours is probably not going to result in it being amputated. But that's the fear that you have. The same way some of us automatically go, oh, my chest is doing a thing. I wonder if it's a heart attack because I'm at an age where heart attacks happen. And so my knowledge, I'm instantly going through, I know all the symptoms of a heart attack, and I know how they're different for women, and I know how they're vague, and I've listened to other people's stories, and I'm going through the checklist, and okay, no, it's not a heart attack. It's definitely a stroke then. So I'm going through the symptoms of a stroke. But that information is a two-sided coin.
But that makes my brain go, okay, but how many people have died because they didn't know that information?
Right.
Howdy, friends. My name is Caitlin, and I'm the owner of Flour and Butter Home Bakery out of Cuero, Texas. In a world full of overly processed foods, dyes, and preservatives, we are proud to create our products with organic and farm-fresh ingredients. We specialize in breads, pastries, and all things sweet. We are open for caterings and pop-up markets. You can find us at Flour and Butter on Facebook and Instagram, or contact 361-571-1125. We can't wait to hear from you.
But that makes my brain go, okay, but how many people have died because they didn't know that information?
Right.
You saved your life.
Sure.
So, yeah, it does have a two-sided effect that, it could be good. But I think the over-information really caused a lot of that anxiety, because one of the big things that I saw when I was pregnant was that baby containers are not good for their hips and joints. So things like if you're a mom, a jumbo seat, whatever it's called, certain type of,
what is that?
It's just a little sit-up seat. You remember she had that one that was like this,
so like a high chair, but it sits on the floor or whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. For them to just sit up in when they're 4 or 5 months old.
Okay.
I didn't put River in it until she was like 8 months old because she was tiny. But those things were not good for them to be sitting like 90-degree angles at 4 months old when their joints are forming.
Right.
Well, so I read that one video. Well, obviously everything in moderation it should be fine.
Right.
Most things. But again, I watched that video and I saw a couple others like that. And so we never did those seats because how much is too much time? Things like that. You also remember me telling you, I felt like I was going to break her brain, give her shaken baby syndrome for her swing being on too high.
Yeah.
You remember things like that. And it's because I've seen so many things about babies with head traumas and how to know that they have a head trauma.
And you do constantly ask me about the head trauma.
I do still.
She fell and bumped her head on this. Does she have a concussion? Is she going to die?
And it's because it's the most vague diagnosis. It's so hard for me to know. My brother is an EMT, and the first time she fell off the bed at 7 months old, I called him going, we need to go to the hospital. And he's like, her pupils are fine. She didn't throw up. She stopped crying pretty quick. Go back to bed. She's okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, just could not believe that she was going to be fine. And I do think that, like I said, that access to so much information and repetitive information too, because it's a niche. That's a TikTok niche that my algorithm formed because I was pregnant and watching that information.
You saw more and more and more.
I saw more and more of it, and I think that definitely caused a lot of the anxiety.
Something I want to clarify, two things before I ask you this next question. You said brother, and I think you meant brother-in-law. I don't want people thinking that's what Dakota's doing. That's what Lane's doing. Brother-in-law is an EMT, but also that we are not medical professionals. We are not mental health professionals. We are not doctors or educators in that field of any sort. And so this is just us sharing our experiences. And so what he gave you was a guideline to comfort you because he knew your kid did not have a concussion.
Yes.
But also what happened to get you through some of that anxiety?
Things like that. What should you actually be worried about?
Right. Not what everybody on TikTok says, but a trusted source.
But when should you actually worry? Because he also knew that I know what I'm doing. He had seen me with my child before. He knew my child. That was the thing too. And so, because when somebody else asked me, I said, this is what I've been told, but go at your own discretion.
Yes, which is what we're telling you now as well.
Yes. Two moms who don't know it all. But so the things that really got me through that first, I did seek mental help with my doctor. I think being medicated did help a lot because I'd struggled with anxiety long before being a mom.
Yes.
I had trauma and other things like that were...
And mostly untreated anxiety.
Yes.
You had been on medication at times, but not with a lot of success.
Yes. So having it severely after having a baby, I really, really got help. And I think that helped a lot because I've been away from my baby, 4 hours now, and I'm fine.
And you've done it several times. You've left her with me numerous times that you couldn't do before, even me. And I know you said early on that you love your mother-in-law. You think she's wonderful. You think
she does.
She's wonderful. I think she's wonderful. I completely trust her. It's not about that.
Absolutely.
But as you said, you raised me. Yeah. I know exactly what you did, and I'm comfortable with that. And so having a support system is super key as well.
Definitely.
And one day more recently, when I think sometimes our anxiety is triggered by nonsense, like having too much information. Sometimes it's completely legit. This is a time to panic. You were really overwhelmed as you were trying to deal with school and trying to find a job. And Cade was making some changes and you've got a fussy baby and don't know why. And you called me and I said, I'm tapped out. I don't have it. And I think a lot of times we don't have that support system and you had to reach somewhere else, which your sister I know is a lifesaver. Mm-hmm. I think that also gave you a lot of time to bitch about me, which you probably don't do very often. So there's probably a lot of healing value in getting that out of your system as well.
We'll do a whole episode on the village because that is definitely a key part in what really helped. Because like I said, my mother-in-law she saves the world all the time for me. But I've told my husband that same thing. My mom raised me. I know what she would do. And he's told me she raised me too. I know my mom raised me too. I know what she would do. And I can tell you that she'll be safe.
I'm just as comfortable with my mother as you are with your mother.
Yes. And so that helped a lot too. The trust of my partner.
Right.
Because that's what I was getting to about dad working, is that I couldn't do it without Cade. I don't know how you did it.
Yeah.
And Cade's mom too.
I drank a lot. No, I'm kidding. I didn't, but I do joke about it a lot.
And Cade's mom kind of felt like a single mom, for a couple years. And she's always had her mom, and I think that that's how she did it too.
Yes.
So I think that that's kind of a generational thing, is that we've all needed our moms to get through it. And man, I hug moms that don't have their moms, because how are you doing it? Who did you call if you swaddled them too tight? Like,
that wasn't a thing that happened when we were kids.
I was worried about it.
I think we dealt with a lot of those things as we came. If your kid was struggling and fussing when they were swaddled, unswaddle them. What are you calling me for? Figure this out on your own. But we also, so many people back then, older than me, were raised with siblings that had children and things like that. You were the first diaper I ever changed. I did not babysit babies. I do not have older siblings or cousins or friends who had children. I had you at 21. And so it was really all new to me. But I also had friends having babies at the same time. We were going through the same thing. You said we all need our moms, but not everybody has a mom.
Mm-hmm.
Weren't raised with a mom. You've lost mom. Mom isn't very good at this, whatever the situation may be. But I think another mom is incredibly valuable.
So just community.
Yes.
Yes. I would agree with that, because around the time that I had River, my friend Kelsey had her baby. And so they're a week or two apart. And we don't really get to see each other a whole lot now, because we're both just busy. But our kids are going to be in the same grade at some point.
Yeah.
Their birthdays are a week apart. And so we'll probably see more of each other then. But I still have that community with her. She also breastfed her baby completely and still nurses just like I do. And so we kind of bond over that. She came to River's first birthday party and brought both her girls. And so, I don't have friends that I hang out with all the time that have those babies, but if I needed to, I could reach out to her and say, hey, is this normal for my kid? And also you have an older one. So, tell me. The knowledge from your peers, I think, is very helpful too, to keep that
and across generations, because there was things that I didn't worry about that y'all worry about. Part of it is we didn't know as much about the neurological effects of what we're feeding, what they're watching, what we're saying. And I know that's one thing that's changed a lot too, is how you handle discipline and things like that. But there's a fine line between being able to discern what knowledge is useful and what knowledge is just crap. I know, finding a lot of things on TikTok, I had asked you, how do you even know this person knows anything? And you are very good at disseminating quality information. And so you're watching people who are doctors or who are therapists. And of course, you have a sister-in-law who's a physical therapist for babies, essentially, is what she does. And so you knew to reach out to the correct resources. And that's what I would encourage young moms today, whether you're having anxiety, whether you're having a little postpartum depression or a lot of postpartum depression, especially reach out in that case, that you're not alone, but it doesn't have to be that way either.
I think resources have also changed from the time that you were having new babies to now, because I see a lot of moms in a local Facebook group that are like you, that they've never had kids before. They've never been around kids, and I know nothing.
Yeah.
How soon should they be walking, crawling, the milestones? I think I looked for those things and was anxious about them anyways. That's why I was so aware, it was just anxiety driven. But I had the research. I had the knowledge. Those moms don't even know what to be looking for,
right?
Whether it's good or bad, or, for me, that over information caused that anxiety. But for some moms, they don't have it at all. And so I think that either that causes more anxiety, or it may not.
Maybe having that knowledge does alleviate it.
Yes, that's what I mean.
So let me fall back on my educator training for a minute at this point, because when students are doing research, there are some things that I tell them as the way to know whether a source is good. And one of them, first of all, is get to the original source, something that has been copied and copied and copied and copied and distributed to not your mainstream stuff. Is not necessarily reputable, and often goes back to, might even look on Snopes or something for that. But to look at original resource things, look at the credibility of the author. If you can't find an author, or if it's just somebody's blog site and they don't have credentials or references, to the information that they're posting, that's probably not information. It's not necessarily wrong, but you do need to verify it in another way. So you want to check it against other resources and check your own experience. Anything that you're hearing, that's advice or suggestions of how you should treat your child, if it doesn't feel right and it doesn't feel right to your child, then it's not right for you.
Exactly.
Your gut instinct is still by far the greatest piece of information you can have as a mom.
Which we could do a whole episode on your gut feeling, intuition, and all that. You were saying about distinguishing between good information and bad information and finding good sources. And I keep referring back to TikTok because it's kind of my new Google. I don't want to read
You're going
pages.
to TikTok and I'm going to AI.
Yeah. I don't want to read pages of responses. I want to watch someone talk about it. And a lot of times it is a doctor or specialist or whoever. But I also do find information from other moms because like you said, the peers, the community is sometimes online too. And I find that there too. The mom that has 5 kids. Yeah, I know how to pack 6 lunches, So
I can get them all done in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I know how to grocery shop. So, those are things that it's not false information. It's just,
right. I think I probably found things like that in talking maybe to coworkers at the time, or, I really don't know where I got cool ideas for neat tricks and things like that. I guess for me, because the internet was not what it was things like parenting magazines and stuff like that. And I've never been a joiner. And so I wasn't involved with things like MOPS, Mothers of Preschoolers, or Mom's Day Out. I didn't babysit other kids a whole lot. Until y'all were finding your own friends in the neighborhood, we didn't have that kind of community. So I think where we find information varies a lot. And what I thought and my mom thought and my mother-in-law thought and my grandmother thought were all radically different things. Like my grandmother couldn't fathom the fact that I only breastfed for months. Why are you not feeding that baby pablum? I still don't know what the heck pablum is. It's some kind of oatmeal or gruel or whatever. I'm thinking it's like rice cereal, which was what we fed first. And I don't know if you ever fed rice cereal.
No.
The information also changes with what we know.
That was another thing I was going to ask you is there were things that you told me when River was a newborn that I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm not going to kill my baby that way.
We've been doing this for millennia. Calm down.
A big one is that people were like a knockout bottle is what they call it. At the end of the night, you give them a bottle with rice cereal mixed with milk and it fills their tummy up, so they go to sleep. Well, I read that that's a choking hazard, so we never did that. Right. And that was one of those things that I was like, are you crazy? I am not going to do that. And I think that is a thing that happens in every generation is you don't know what you're talking about. That is silly. We don't do things that way.
That's so funny. We didn't even worry about it, which is, we just didn't have as much mom anxiety. And there's probably a million reasons for that. There wasn't as much anxiety in the world. We weren't dealing with as much. Our resources weren't as chronically low as they are now. There was a lot of reasons for that.
We saw something the other day that was like a baby patio. You and Bubba were watching like crazy things on TV or something like that. And and you remember it was a baby patio, like a cage out the window in New York or something.
Baby balcony.
Yeah.
Yes, things that we used to do as, I don't know, parents or whatever. And that's black and white. The only ones I've ever seen are black and white. So we're probably looking at 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
But it had come out that babies need lots of vitamin D and you've got to get them out in the sun. And when you live in a high-rise apartment, what else are you going to do if you can't go to the park every day? And so they built these
it looks like a patio.
Yes.
A cat patio.
Basically propped out the window like a window air conditioning unit. And it was a cage and you'd let your baby crawl out of there. And were those moms taking laudanum or something? Because I don't know how you could do that and think anything else in the world.
Yeah, the local Facebook group that I'm in for moms, there's always a car seat safety post of some kind.
Right.
And there's always the older grandma in the group saying, back in my day, we just strapped him to the hood and went. And Kathy, shut up and buckle my kid up.
I clearly remember riding with Vivian Berry to Sportsman's Paradise to take about 12 kids swimming in the back of a pickup. We did not care about our children.
And I see pictures of old car seats. I'm like, y'all did not, y'all wanted them. That was murder. Okay.
There's somewhere a picture of me in a car seat, and it's just like a a metal roll cage with a couple of, it's like a seat you'd find in a restaurant.
Roller coasters are more safe than those car seats.
I don't know. We were actually strapped out. I don't know if we were strapped into the car, but we were strapped in well to the seat. And then I put Lucy in the car seat the other day, and there's 14 buckles and a password, and you gotta use your fingerprint. I don't know what all they have to do now.
Lucy's like, you're doing it wrong, Nani.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Oh gosh. I think ultimately our job is to be able to sort out the information and take what's relevant and useful to us and be able to dismiss what is not. And part of that simply comes with time.
Exactly. And also, if you are ever struggling with postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, please tell a loved one and seek medical professional help. Thank y'all so much for listening today. We've enjoyed the laughs, and y'all tune in next week.
All right, we'll see you.
Thanks. Hey, Mom.
What?
I have $20. I want to get lunch.
You always need $20.